Good evening. Happy Purim. Welcome to the second annual Latke Hamantaschen debate at Temple Sinai. Third, sorry. And by the way, happy spring, which started when the sun crossed the equator about 2 hours ago. I'm Philip Lehman. I'm president of Temple Sinai. This event is part of our celebration of Purim, the Feast of Esther, as we just saw during the spiel. As you know, the story involves a plot to kill the Jews of Persia by an evil henchman named Haman, and how he's foiled by the brave Queen Esther and her uncle Mordecai, both of whom were Jews. As a result, Purim has become a holiday of revelry, buffoonery, and even a bit of excess in food and drink. For more than 70 years, scholars at the University of Chicago have been debating the very important and age-old question, Latkes or Hamantaschen. They've drawn on a variety of sources of logic, from philosophy to science, to legal arguments, to politics, to the Talmud. Their arguments may encompass all and more. This has been going on about as long as Temple Sinai has been in existence, and so for that reason and others, 2 years ago we decided to adopt their tradition by holding similar debate at Temple Sinai. In particular, our debaters will be presenting the relative merits of latkes, which, as you know, are potato pancakes fried in oil and commonly associated with Hanukkah, and Hamantaschen, cookie dough like those out there, filled with sweet fillings such as strawberry or cherry jam, poppy seed, or even chocolate, all of which we associate with Purim. I'm supposed to say this is not an actual debate, rather a mock debate, but our participants will take a stand, savory versus sweet, and debate on other grounds, perhaps, as Wasi Muhammad did last year, different from their expected areas of expertise. Ground rules are each of our presenters has between 5 and 10 minutes to present his or her case. And the most important part, of course, is to have fun in honor of the holidays. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our debaters. Our first debater is Toby Tabachnik, who is a writer for the Pittsburgh Jewish Chronicle. She's familiar to many of you because she's been at the Jewish Chronicle for about 12 years. Prior to that, she practiced law for about the same amount of time, using her law degree from Northwestern, building on her undergraduate degree in English literature and art history from WashU in St. Louis. And so, as is apparent, she's a person with diverse background, all of which I'm sure she'll bring to bear on the perspective of Latke versus Hamantaschen. Toby.
Good evening. It is heartwarming to see so many of you here tonight to discuss this critical topic, which clearly reaches to the very essence of our people. I am talking about Jewish values, something which this congregation and its members have put at the very forefront of its mission. I admittedly do not have the insights of the esteemed Jewish clergy present here tonight, Rabbis Gibson and Gorbin, Cantor Berman, Rabbi Perman, but I can share with you my perspective from my niche vantage point as a Jewish journalist. In the last few years, I have conducted extensive interviews with most Jewish food items as part of an investigative piece that may or may not ever be published by the Pittsburgh Jewish Chronicle. In my research, I have broken bread with challah, chewed the fat with schmaltz, chatted it up with kreplach, and just between us, spent some rather unfortunate moments with kashka varnishkas. Although I'd prefer not to get into those sordid details right now, suffice it to say that there is a reason why KV, as he likes to be known, smells like dirty sweat socks. Just as an aside, Bagel refused to give me an interview. He thinks he is holier than thou. But by far, the most interesting Jewish food items with whom I have spoken have been the latke and the Hamantaschen. Which is better, ladies and gentlemen? I will let their characters speak for themselves. Many may not know this, but the latke, since it was just a small fry, has been a relentless self-promoter. His slick and flashy demeanor caught the attention early on of casting agents in theater, and he had an extremely successful run on both the stage and in film. In 1944, the Lotke co-starred with Judy Garland in a little movie you may have seen called Eat Me in St. Louis. While he did not play the boy next door, he nonetheless had a pivotal role as a side dish, for which he won an Academy Award nomination as Best Supporting Vegetable. He lost out, unfortunately, to the ensemble from Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Lotke had a hard time getting cast after that, perhaps due to a Hollywood scandal. While it was never proved, rumors circulated that he had an affair with a married spud, a Mrs. Potato Head. Her husband had a lot of clout in those days and used it to get Lotke blacklisted. But in 1971, his career got a reboot, and he ended up on Broadway in Grease. A New York Times reviewer gushed, and I quote, "Lotke sizzles in Grease." Thereafter, Lotke again became a darling of the entertainment industry, and putting his acting on the back burner, he decided to try his hand at writing. He drafted a screenplay and sold it to MGM, and the film was in the midst of production when all the parties involved were sued for copyright infringement. The movie, which never came to be, was called Fried Green Potatoes, and would have starred Kathy Bates, Jessica Tandy, and Mary Louise Parker in a tale about the power of friendship. The Hollywood reporters were not so kind to Lotke, calling him a flash in the pan. After that, Lotke became a bona fide couch potato. His conceit was that he never learned to move beyond a keen focus on himself, his career, and his craving for adoration. Let's compare him to Hamantaschen, who I contend is the most selfless of all Jewish foods, a social justice advocate, and by the way, extremely delicious. Always known for being a smart cookie, Hamantaschen has devoted her life to helping others and improving our world. Tikkun Olam. In 2017, she volunteered to serve as a model for the caps worn by the thousands of women who marched in support of minority rights at the Women's March. I know that many people assume that the triangle-shaped adornments at the tops of the caps are supposed to represent pussycat ears, but originally they were actual Hamantaschen. Our Hamantaschen selflessly placed herself atop all those women's heads and all was well until it started to rain. Unfortunately, the storm made the cookie crumble. Her background is humble. She had her start as plain white flour, some sugar, a couple eggs, but she has become a beacon of diversity. Her warm embrace of flavors and fillings of all kinds should serve as an example to us all. Not only does she embrace whatever filling she finds in her center, she actually envelops them. Sweet and savory, poppy seed to chocolate, peanut butter to cheddar, pulled beef to prune. There is virtually no flavor that this pastry will not hold dear. This, my friends, is the epitome of Jewish values. Now, I don't usually do this, but the Jewish Chronicle went to press yesterday, and I am going to give you a sneak peek at the front page. We felt very, very confident that Hamantaschen would win this debate, and thank you, and that Lotke would be so embarrassed he would catch the next bus out of Pittsburgh. I just hope this doesn't turn into a Dewey Truman situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next debater is Rabbi Sarah Perman, who is the Rabbi Emerita of Congregation Emmanuel Israel in Greensburg. In addition to her rabbinic degree from HUCJAR, she's a graduate of Goucher College. She's a frequent fixture at Temple Sinai services. And appropriate for this evening and her defense of, and this is a spoiler alert, the Hamantaschen, she suggested I point out that she loves to bake, typically at least once a week, and she even brought the chocolate gluten-free Hamantaschen for this evening. Also, this is not traditional academic headgear. It's a little bit of a carryover and just missing the umbrella, I think. I don't know.
I'll tell you when, okay? I am thrilled to be part of this debate. After last year's debate, where except for Wasi Muhammad and Rabbi Gorbin, I felt the Hamantaschen got short shrift and did not deserve it. Because without question, Hamantaschen are more Jewish than latkes, and also better, way better, and I am determined to prove it. Although Toby Tabachnik already started the discussion and gave some arguments for it. There are traditions that suggest that the triangular shape of the Hamantaschen represents the three major components of Judaism: God, Torah, and Israel. You should forget that Christians might connect the Hamantaschen to the Trinity. The Hamantaschen is definitely Jewish. Look, if you superimpose one Hamantaschen over another, but reverse one of them, it becomes a Star of David, the symbol of the Jewish people. The Hebrew word for Hamantaschen is Oznei Haman, and you can see it up there on the screens. Ears of Haman. The root for ear is found in the word ha'azinu, which is the name of a Torah portion from Deuteronomy. It means pay attention, give ear. It can be a synonym for Shema. As you probably know, the Shema is the first prayer we teach to our children. It is recited both in the morning and in the evening, and is supposed to be the last prayer we say before we die. Thus, the Hamantaschen, or Oznei Haman, remind us of what many consider to be our most important prayer, or what those of us raised in classical Reform Judaism know as the watchword of our faith. The three-sided Hamantaschen reminds us of our patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The three sides also remind us of the 3 times of day we are supposed to pray: the morning with Shacharit, the afternoon with Mincha, and the evening with Mariv. The three-cornered Hamantaschen is also a symbol of our 3 major holidays: Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. I would even argue that the 3 sides of the Hamantaschen are reminding us that Passover is coming with the 3 matzot. What does the latke remind us of? Nothing. No biblical ancestors, not other Jewish holidays, no worship, although others might argue otherwise tonight, and we shall see what they have to say. Even the creation story suggests that Hamantaschen are the best. After all, the 3rd day of creation is described as Tov twice, hinting that indeed Hamantaschen are Tov, good, really good. And the repetition occurs on the 3rd day, an allusion to the 3 sides of the Hamantaschen, suggesting that God not only approved of the Hamantaschen, but also was encouraging us to make them. Latkes have no history in the Tanakh or Bible, not even in the book of Maccabees, which is in part of the Bible. But there are plenty of examples of pastries suggesting Hamantaschen in the Tanakh. In Genesis 40, Pharaoh's baker is imprisoned with Joseph. True, the baker was put to death at the end of the story, but what would the Pharaoh know about Hamantaschen? In Jeremiah 7, we read how in Judah and Jerusalem, the children gather sticks, the fathers build the fire, and the mothers knead dough to make cakes for the Queen of Heaven. Although Jeremiah tells us God does not like this, still this is a clue that the people were learning to make Hamantaschen. Perhaps God didn't like those cakes because, sometimes they're not always perfect triangles. Or perhaps God was upset that the Humintashen were going to the Queen of Heaven instead of being shared as Mishloach Manot. And think of it, we are encouraged to share our Humintashen through Mishloach Manot. It is even commanded in the Megillah that we are to send portions to one another. There's no commandment to share latkes. Of course, the Megillah itself has plenty of connections and hints of the Humintashen. The Humintashen with its 3 sides also reminds us of the 3 women who are named in the Megillah: Esther, Vashti, and Zeresh, who was Haman's wife. Traditionally, Humintashen were made with poppy seed filling. The poppy seeds are a reminder of the 10,000 talents of silver paid by Haman to Ahasuerus to kill the Jews. As I mentioned previously, the Hebrew for Humintashen is Oznei Haman. The word Oznei, ears of, is a form of the word ozen. Thank you. Or ear. This reminds us of Mordecai overhearing the plot by Bigthan and Teresh to kill Ahasuerus towards the beginning of the book of Esther. If you remember the story, Mordecai was not rewarded at the time for his loyalty to the king. And only after Haman had plotted to kill the Jews was there a night that Ahasuerus could not sleep and learned that he needed to reward Mordecai, asking Haman to do so. The Humintashen, or Oznei Haman, is hinted at when Esther hears of Mordecai being in mourning over the king's edict to kill the Jews. But there are some other connections of Humintashen to the Tanakh. Face it, the Latkan has not only no connection to any of the Tanakh, it also is unstable. It will roll away, while the Humintashen with its 3 sides is very stable. Latkes are really good only fresh out of the frying pan. Humintashen, though, have a much longer shelf life. They travel well, to which I can attest, since I recently packed close to 4 dozen in just a plastic container and took them on a cruise to the Caribbean to share with conservative colleagues, since it was what is known as Purim Katan, the little Purim that occurs in the first Adar that we had with a Jewish leap year. There were a few of those Humintashen left over, and even after 3 weeks, they were still edible and tasty. You can even eat Humintashen right out of the freezer. Frozen latkes, though? Ugh. Latkes are only really good right out of the frying pan, as I said. And still, Humintashen, without question, are better. People liked Humintashen, perhaps loved Humintashen so much they made monuments to them. The pyramids found in Egypt and even Mexico are monuments to the Humintashen. The Romans cut their pizza in the shape of triangular Humintashen. Why else would we have had pizza tonight? And did you know that there is a Humintashen on the back of a $1 bill? Whoops, wrong one. There. You see? And it has an eye filling. Buckminster Fuller may not have been Jewish, but his famous geodesic dome, as my colleague Henry Shapiro noted, is a tribute to the Humintashen, since Fuller discovered that if a spherical structure was created from triangles, that is Humintashen, it would have unparalleled strength unless one ate all of the Humintashen. Do you have the picture of the dome? There we go. See all the Humintashen? The variety of Humintashen we see these days, both sweet and savory, as Toby mentioned, show the creativity of the Jewish people and our diversity. As an example, one could argue the multicolor ones show the support of the LGBTQ community. There you go. Beyond poppy seed, prune, apricot, cherry, and chocolate every year, we see new and wilder varieties. The most interesting one this year, I thought, was this one. Are you able to play the video? I sent a video. It didn't come. Well, let me describe what the video was. It's okay. It is, you take a piece of pastry dough, okay? I think it was pastry dough, and you use a large bowl to cut out a circle. And then you fill the external part of the circle, the rim of it, with Nutella. And you fold it up and roll it around and make the triangular shape. And then you take this huge amount of chocolate and place it into the center. So you get a Hamantaschen that is bigger than this, I can tell you from looking at it. I did not try to make it. And the recipe that is on the internet actually will make 2 of these, and you have enough probably to feed like 16 people. And since we're supposed to eat it at Purim, it's certainly an appropriate kind of dish and something new to try. By the way, the ones in the lower right corner are a green mint Hamantaschen, if I remember, chocolate mint Hamantaschen. The ones in the upper right have crushed peppermint candy. The ones on the upper left are a triple chocolate. The ones in the center are pistachio. Oh, I apologize. The ones on the lower left are the candy cane ones, and the ones on the upper right are just with sprinkles. So obviously there are a huge variety. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, the Hamantaschen reminds us of Torah. Remember I said there was still more to connect the Hamantaschen to the Torah. How, you ask? Now I need this picture. Nope, there, okay. The Hebrew letters of Oznei Haman equals 163. And I gave you what the value of each Hebrew letter is. If you switch the numbers, you get 613, equal to the numbers of the laws in the Torah. And as we learn, Talmud Torah Kedneged Kulam, the study of Torah overall, Hamantaschen above all else. What more proof do you need? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is the Honorable Dan Gilman. More than a year ago, Mayor Bill Peduto, a previous debater here, as you all know, asked Dan to be his chief of staff for the city of Pittsburgh. In that time, Dan has been pretty much everywhere. I know this from seeing him everywhere. Prior to that, Dan had been elected to his second term, ably representing District 8 to our city council. Before that, Dan had also worked with Bill Peduto when Mr. Peduto was on council. Dan is a proud graduate of Shadyside Academy and Carnegie Mellon University, having studied ethics, history, and public policy, which makes one speculate how he's going to make his argument. He served on the boards of a number of local organizations and is an active member of and speaker at Temple Sinai. Occasionally, he even gets home to see his family.
Thank you, Philip. So, when Rabbi asked me to do this and I started looking at the old YouTube videos and trying to understand the history, I first went just to what does my heart say? And I will give away very quickly that to me this is a no-brainer. It is clearly the latke with no competition. I went to my personal life, grew up in a house where my mom made the world's greatest latke. The Hamantaschen was nothing but an attempt for her to make us eat prunes. I thought about the holidays where we'd have our large Hanukkah parties. Everyone would gather in the kitchen around the frying pan because how else can you eat a latke? And it was community building. Whereas, again, the prune Hamantaschen sat in Ziploc bags for 6 months or sometimes till next holiday. Or I thought about the fact that the latke is, in oil, celebration of a miracle of how long oil can last and the candles in 8 days. Or the Hamantaschen, which my 3-year-old made in 5 minutes at the JCC today. And it all showed to me that I was right, that something that is just basically a spoon to get more applesauce or sour cream is the winner. But as a Carnegie Mellon grad, I thought I needed to go a little more into the proof, into the science of it. And though my degree is in ethics, history, and public policy, and I will note my only C in college was in physics, and I'm the son of a physics professor, and I dropped out of my only engineering class, which should make Dr. Cohen proud, I will try to take a more scientific and math approach to this. One famous quote, "As the mayor of Pittsburgh, I can assure you that we will follow the guidelines of the Paris Agreement for our people, our economy, and our future." This is the tweet heard around the world after Donald Trump pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords, and more than 268,000 people liked it on Twitter. 400 parts per million. It's the average concentration of CO2 in the universe today, compared to which was about 270 parts per million before industrialization. And we all know this is causing rising temperatures, rising sea levels, record rainfall, Pittsburgh landslides, terrible potholes. It's concerning to all of us. We have to do our part. So I started to look at what does the Hamantaschen or the latke do to the environment? So with a little research, I learned that if we assume either way is going to take you an hour of cooking, that an hour of your oven on baking your Hamantaschen on medium to high heat is about 2,400 watts, or 2.4 kilowatt hours in a day. This is equal to driving 4 miles in your car, or burning 2 pounds of coal. With 6.5 million Jews in the world, and an assumption that 50% of Jews are going to participate, that means the Jewish community puts 13 million miles of driving into our atmosphere, or burns more than 6.5 million pounds of coal just for a cookie. However, the latke, and this is obviously assuming we all use electric stoves, because that's the only way this makes any sense. An electric stove on medium to high heat is only 1,500 watts, or about 1.5 kilowatt hours in a day. In that same hour of cooking, you're only driving 2.6 miles, or burning 1.2 pounds of coal. With the same assumptions about our Jewish community, that means we are only driving 8.45 million miles, or burning about 3.9 million pounds of coal. So let us agree that there's a few lurking variables out there in my scientific research, such as that no one has a gas stove, don't worry about where the vegetable oil comes from, or the fact that my mom would use about 8,000 paper grocery bags to sop up the grease and then put those in the landfill. All those things aside, as a father of 2 young children committed to the environment and committing to a healthier lifestyle and a future for next generations, it is abundantly clear to me that science has proven that the latke is in fact better than the Hamantaschen.
Terrifying. Our next speaker is Dr. Nancy Burke, who is a clinical psychologist, entertainment and fan-based strategist, author, podcaster, and stand-up comic. Armed with a PhD from Vanderbilt, she's an online entertainment columnist for Parade magazine and host of the celebrity podcast Wine at 9, which features conversations with over 300 celebrities and show business insiders. She's one of the 2010 winners of the International Irma Bombeck Writing Competition and now serves on the faculty and planning committee of the popular Irma Bombeck Writers Workshop. Her Shady Side magazine column, Just for Laughs, earned her a Golden Quill Award for humor, and her self-help humor book, I have to read this out loud, College Bound and Gagged, How to Help Your Kid Get into a Great College Without Losing Your Savings, Your Relationship, or Your Mind, can be seen in the feature film Admission with Tina Fey and Paul Rudd. She was a finalist in the 2016 Stand-Up Pittsburgh Comedy Competition. She's also, wait for it, an adjunct associate professor at the Pitt School of Dental Medicine. Seriously. I just can't wait to see what you're going to bring to bear here.
If I have to say I sold 10 books, and now I see that college is you can make money in college, but I did no Photoshop. And thank you everyone for letting me be on this committee with you. Dan made it all about the environment, but now it's time to make it all about me. So I am a former Protestant Jewish mother. I've been Jewish for over 3 decades, but for some reason, there are some circles of people that still call me a convert. Why? I've mastered guilt brilliantly. I've hosted seders. I've fasted. I actually calligraphied 125 bar mitzvah invitations with a single Sharpie and only 1 bottle of wine. And yet, they're still calling me a convert. Why? Because the entire art of mastering Jewish food is so complicated, I still haven't grasped it. And it is not my fault, because I grew up in a small coastal town of New England, and my father, an avid fisherman, had never, ever caught a gefilte. Now, I was really at a disadvantage, but the problem is you guys threw me into a world of food where pretty much everything's beige. You've got You got your kugel, beige. You got your matzo balls, beige. You got your latkes, beige. And you got your gefilte fish, or gefilte, beige. And I quickly learned the difference with the whole, not being around the gefilte, I learned the difference between the whole jelly and broth thing and the fact that jelly is not the same jelly, and that cocktail and tartar sauce is best not served with it. And just when I thought I had mastered the whole matzo ball thing, someone tells me that some Jewish diners prefer their matzo balls hard and some prefer them soft. Now, I do one texture, and it's called the only one you're getting. So, I am very slow to the party, and I am grateful to be here with this esteemed panel and make my case, and my case will be made from the perspective of a convert, because we all want to embrace the food, but we need to choose what works best and fastest to get us embraced by the community. You'll know my choice very early on, but I will say the ladies' rule this evening. First of all, we have to evaluate things by 5 simple factors. There's a confusion factor. 1 latke is good. 2 latke, better. 2 latkes, better. 1 hamantash is great. 2 hamantashen is better. Now, excuse me, but hamantash, I never heard that word until I was booked for this gig. No one ever says hamantash. Jewish people I know, the one I live with, he did not know that there was a singular version. That is because most of us have never had just one. So, for the confusion factor, I give latke 1 point, but I give the hamantash 2 because it's so delicious you can't keep to just 1. Then we have the safety factor, factor 2. I'm a firm believer hot oil is best in the hands of a talented hairdresser, quirky mechanic, and of course the fry cooks at Primanti's. Score 1 for the hamantash and 0 for the incredibly dangerous latke. 3, the discovery potential factor. Now, we all make mistakes in the kitchen, right? But we have to analyze which one will get detected more readily. If you make a great latke, that's fine, but you mess that up early on, it's getting pushed around the plate through the entire meal, and everyone knows the error of your ways. But if you have a great plate of latkes and even a mediocre brisket, sometimes people are too full to dive into the hamantashen and have themselves one, so they might not detect a bad hamantash. Then we have the imposter potential factor. Now, lying's never a good thing, but sometimes life gets in the way and you've got no choice. So which is easier to send your spouse, your partner out running for so you can snow the in-laws? Now, I personally believe that it is the hamantash, because no one expects your house to smell like pastry, because most people tackle that a few days before. And while there are many, like Dan, who may say that you can just, fake the whole latke thing, you gotta heat up the oil, lay out the food processor, burn your finger for authenticity. You might as well just do it, make them while you got everything out there. I especially am fond of the complaint probability factor, because if you've got food and you got family, you got complaints. And nothing generates complaints like a missing condiment. Oh, wait, I don't believe hamantash has a dollop of anything that isn't already baked in it. There's no absent-minded cook in that equation. However, have you ever tried to forget have you ever forgotten the condiments associated with latkes? So the score is, the score is 1 for Hamantash and 0 for latkes. And I know there's someone in the audience who's going to say that a poppy seed Hamantash should be served with dental floss. And I can assure you that all 300 Jewish dentists in your congregation would agree that personal hygiene is everyone's individual responsibility. In closing, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to rest my case. I hope I've converted you into a little Hamantash favoring if you were latke leaning. But the Hamantash can be the only winner because you can't eat just one. And while it has colorful little pockets of preserves and other tasty fillings, it will always remain faithfully beige.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Dr. Jared Cohn, who served as the 8th president of Carnegie Mellon University, leading the university to new heights during those 16 years. Thank you, boss. Having stepped down from that post, he's currently a university professor in our engineering college. He holds a bachelor's in civil engineering from Penn and master's and PhD degrees in civil and environmental engineering from MIT. Before Carnegie Mellon, he was dean of forestry and environmental studies at Yale, and was, before that, a faculty member in the Department of Geography and Environmental Engineering, as well as Assistant Associate Dean and then Vice Provost at Johns Hopkins. As you know from hearing him talk during our Beit Midrash, his technical expertise is in water, but given his previous post, he has exposure to a lot of interesting areas, and so please enlighten us.
Thank you, Philip. I have no illusions as to why I'm here. Philip sent me an email and he said, "You still got that robe, Jerry?" I said, "Which one?" He said, "That outrageous gray MIT robe. It would be just the thing we need for our great Hamantash and latke debate." I said, "Okay, Philip, I'll come." All right, let's get serious here. You heard my credentials. I have a PhD in engineering. I was president of Carnegie Mellon University, one of the great universities of the world. And I taught at Yale and Johns Hopkins, 2 other not-so-shabby universities. I am an authority on anything on which I choose to pontificate. I'm not going to make puns or jokes. I'm not going to play the Jewish card. This is facts, science. I admire what Dan Gilman attempted to do. Nice try, grasshopper. I'm going to bring it home. Now, I did my research online. I went to Wikipedia, of course. And I checked out the University of Chicago videos of their many marvelous debates of this sort in the past. And I've come up with some really interesting observations before I get to my own, based on my original research. You know, there's a famous physicist at MIT named Robert Silber who discovered that latkes actually represent the dark matter in the universe. The 20% of the universe we can't see, it's actually latkes. Professor Silber of MIT said so. Now, going outside my expertise, but nevertheless, it's, I think, another compelling observation. You may have heard this before in a prior debate, because it does have kind of a Pittsburgh connection. But you know that Associate Justice of the Supreme Court Blackmun, in his opinion on Allegheny County v. ACLU, have you heard this? Cited potato pancakes, which Jews make on Hanukkah by frying pancakes in oil. no matter how hard we've searched, we can find no reference to Hamantashen in any Supreme Court opinion. Only latkes have a Supreme Court opinion. I thought that was pretty compelling. Obviously, you're not buying it. One more other observation. I heard a great lecture at the University of Chicago on this topic. And the economics professor who was giving the talk made the brilliant observation that potatoes have been so important in the world that potato famines have changed the course of history. There's never been a prune famine in the history of the world, ever. Nor will there ever be. Okay, so let me, though, get to my own original research. I went to the definitive source for recipes, the New York Times cookbook, and I found a recipe for 3 dozen latkes and 3 dozen Hamantashen. Now, you heard from my colleague, Mr. Gilman, the Honorable Dan Gilman, how, from a cooking point of view, it's clear that by eating Hamantashen, you're really screwing up the environment. But latkes are relatively benign. I went even deeper and looked at the ingredients that go into these things and estimated, of course, absolutely accurately down to 3 significant digits, the carbon footprint of a latke and a Hamantashen. Are you ready for this? 3 dozen Hamantashen produce 3.76 pounds of carbon dioxide. 3 3/4 pounds of carbon dioxide for 3 Hamantashen. 3 latkes produce only 1.56 pounds of CO2. The carbon footprint of Hamantashen is more than 2 times greater than the carbon footprint of latkes. Tonight, I think we can all agree, Hamantashen are the coal of Jewish delicacies. Do you want to be promoting the coal of Jewish cuisine? No. Join me. Latkes forever. Thank you.
Well, that concludes our speakers. I hope you're all convinced. I have no idea what you're convinced of. Please join me in giving our speakers another round of thanks.
Okay, guys, we're going to do this by standing. First of all, we do have gifts. Come on, we need the women over here for the Hamantashen. We're going to have a standing vote here. The women over there, and over here. All those who think they are convinced in their heart of hearts that they are better human beings on God's earth environmentally and much more attuned to the latke, stand up. We'll see.
Stand.
Okay, sit down. How many stand if you think the Hamantashen carry the day? It is clear, Dr. Lehman, that Hamantashen have carried the day. As always, we want to thank Cantor Berman for starting this great tradition of ours, for helping to invite wonderful speakers. Tomorrow, there will be Megillah readings all over the city. Our Purim is tonight. We hope that you will enjoy Hamantashen and nobody go home and make a latke. It's the wrong stuff. Don't do it, even if it's environmentally sound. Have a wonderful evening. Any last words, Cantor Berman? Drive safe.